Welcome to the 80th annual meeting and presidential address of the American Finance Association. My name is Jim Schallheim. I'm the Executive Secretary and Treasurer of the AFA, and I will begin the business portion of our meeting tonight. First, I'd like to recognize the results of the 2019 election. For President, Kenneth Singleton. President-elect and 2021 Program Chair, John Graham. Vice President, Laura Starks. And our new directors are Ralph Koijan, Gordon Phillips, and Manju Puri. I would like to thank the nominating committee and the candidates who ran for office. I'd also like to thank our outgoing board members for their service. That includes Wei Jiang, Mitchell Peterson, Tony Whitehead, and David Sharfstein. Next, I'd like to address the finances of the AFA. As we report every year, the financial situation of the AFA is excellent. As of fiscal year in June 30th, 2018, our income, including investment income and unrealized capital gains, was nearly $2 million, and our total assets amount to $21.4 million, up 11.6% from 2018. Membership numbers for 2019 show an increase in total membership of 4% over 2018, and total membership now of the AFA stands at nearly 12,000. I'd like to mention a couple of actions undertaken by the AFA in 2019. First, we negotiated a 5-year extension of our publishing contract with Wiley. Second, this year, we engaged the services of an AFA ombudsperson. Francine Montemuro is our first AFA ombuds. She has over 20 years' experience as a practicing ombuds, most recently at Boston University. Francine is here at the meetings, and I'd like her to stand and be recognized. You can meet Francine at Show Office 4 here in the Hyatt, or contact her at the email shown on the screen. For your information about future AFA meetings, unfortunately we won't be in San Diego. We will be in Chicago in 2021 and Boston in 2022. And finally, I'd like to thank our administrative manager, Annette Clark, for all her hard work on behalf of the AFA. I now turn the meeting over to our AFA president, David Hirschleifer.
I want to thank you as well, Jim, I want to thank Jim Schallheim for his relentless efforts on behalf of the AFA. And I also want to thank those who have served on AFA committees, where the workload on some of these committees has been extremely large. And even though the number of committees is large, I do want to make special note that the founding members of the AFA's Affect Committee, Renee Adams, the founding chair of the committee, and Michelle Lowry, the founding vice chair of the committee, are stepping down after many years of tireless work on behalf of women in finance. So my thanks to the committees and to them as well. Thank you very much. And of course, very notably, I want to thank our program chair, Ken Singleton, for the major task of organizing an outstanding conference. So thank you, Ken. And I want to thank Brian Rutledge for his valuable help with the AFA website and other IT strategic matters. We've had a busy year that goes beyond the regular crucial ongoing business of the AFA, and newer items have ranged from the revision of the bylaws to the rollout of the new AFA website, the inception of the AFA Strategic Planning Committee, renegotiation of the Journal of Finance publishing contract, negotiation of contracts for performing surveys of both departments and individuals in the finance profession, new funding for awards, and more. So the reports that follow will focus especially on some crucial operations, including the AFA program, the Journal of Finance, and bestowing honors. The order of reports will be the reports by the program chair, the vice president, the Journal of Finance editor, and then the past president will introduce the special awards for the evening. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to the program chair, Ken Singleton.
So thank you all for coming to San Diego and participating and enjoying the program here. Here's a word map of the conference. And I was particularly pleased how it came out, I suppose, this year, given my own interest in empirical work in finance and economics. There's a lot of evidence at this conference, and I think that's great. You can see around the fringes that it speaks to a lot of issues, assets, corporate, financial, risk, etc. But we had a fantastic set of submissions, and I'm very pleased with how it all came out. There were a little over 1,800 submissions this year. 241 papers made it onto the program, almost all of them through the regular submission process. About 13% overall acceptance rate. We ended up with 75 sessions in the end, and a great set of poster sessions to complement this. The breakdown of the session chairs was, you can see here in the statistics, 75, 25. Theoretical, empirical, this is not an exact science. Very similarly, about 3/4, 1/4, and then a broad set of topic areas with corporate and financial intermediation on the one hand and asset pricing on the other, pretty much balancing things out. I'm particularly grateful to the chairs of the sessions for taking on this task, for organizing the sessions, choosing the papers, coming up with great discussants, and all in a very timely way. We had a distinguished lecture this year, Rob Townsend from MIT. It was recorded and will be available online, so if you missed it, I encourage you to take a look at that and see his thinking on the basically micro foundations of distributed ledgers and their role in the design of financial infrastructure and payment systems around the world. We had several AFA panels, 4. They also are being recorded, so if you missed the panels, you can have a chance to see them, and actually I think our video team is moving fairly expeditiously, so hopefully these will be up within the next week or two. We had a great PhD poster session, which you've seen out in the foyers here. I've walked through it a couple of times and have been very impressed by the papers. Thank you to John Graham and Sung Ma and Young Sung for pulling that together on behalf of all of us. And then the logistics of this conference, well, thank you. Of course, Jim and Gwen Loftus played an important role, and Annette Clark was just an indispensable sidekick in pulling this all together, and I'm very, very deeply grateful for her work as well. So thank you very much for being here.
Each year, the AFA awards travel grants to help PhD students travel to attend the AFA and help defer the costs. This year, the AFA awarded 225 travel grants, which is up by about 1/3 from last year, so the program is growing in use. The attendees, the students who took advantage of travel grants, come from over 140 different institutions, and their countries of citizenship also number over 140. So it's quite a diverse and international group. 34% of the recipients are women, and the age range for the recipients overall are aged 23 to 43. So we're real happy they're able to attend. If any travel grant recipients are in the audience, could you please stand briefly to be recognized? And then very briefly on the poster session, Ken already touched on it, but one comment we had heard in the past from the poster participants was they wished for a little bit more engagement in traffic. So that's why we put them right outside the door here. Even when you're at the reception after the presidential address, the poster participants will still be out there in the lobby, and there will actually be some food out there, I believe, also. So we strongly encourage you to go out there and try to meet some of the poster presenters and learn about their research. Thank you.
So I'm going to present the report of the Journal of Finance editor. And 2019 was a year in which we began our second 3-year term as editors of the Journal of Finance. So this is Philip Bond, Amit Zaru, Wei Xiong, and myself. And the year was a busy year, so we had 1,083 new submissions. This is about a 5% increase over the year before. Resubmissions were quite steady, and so the number of total submissions then overall also went up to close to 1,200 in 2019. In terms of turnaround, the Journal of Finance continues to be quite fast. We have a median turnaround time in 2019 of 48 days. And what is perhaps even more important, the share of papers that take more than 100 days to be returned with a decision is less than 10%. So for more than 90% of the papers, we were able to make a decision in less than 100 days. Let me show you some first-round statistics on what happens to papers after their initial submission. So there's not much news in terms of the desk rejection rate. It looks quite similar to the previous years. It's around 1/3 of the papers that we reject without sending it out to reviewers. Our first round R&R rate is 7.5% in 2019. This is a little bit lower than in the previous years. But this rate fluctuates a little bit from year to year, and we are anticipating that this 7.5% is probably at the lower end of the range that we're going to see over the coming years. One thing that we watch quite closely is how many rounds does it take for a paper to actually make it into the journal, right? So if you think about process for authors, it's not only the turnaround time on the initial submission that matters to authors, but also if you get an R&R, how many rounds does it actually take until your paper goes all the way through the process. And on those metrics, the JF looks pretty good. So we have in 2019 about 50% of all papers that got accepted in that year. About 50% made it all the way through after just one round of revisions. And then if you look at those that had 1 or 2 rounds of revisions, that's basically almost all the papers. So 97% of all the papers that got accepted in 2019 made it there with only 2 rounds of revisions. And so we are going to try to work hard to keep it that way also in the coming years. Some numbers on the total number of papers that we published. So in 2019, we had a bit more than 70 papers in the Journal of Finance. Right now, our pipeline of accepted papers is quite large, so I'm anticipating that this number will probably also go up a little bit in the coming year. In terms of impact, the Journal of Finance continues to do very well. So I'm going to show you some numbers on citations, where we're comparing the Journal of Finance to the other finance journals and the top 5 econ journals. And so in terms of the total number of citations, how often did papers published anytime in the Journal of Finance get cited in 2018, the JF is number 2 after the AER. The 2-year impact factor, which basically measures how often papers published in 2016 and 17 got cited in 2018. On that metric, the JF is number 3, just very close behind the Journal of Political Economy. In terms of the 5-year impact factor, the JF is number 2 after the QJE. Yeah? So on all of these metrics, the JF is either number 2 or number 3 in economics and finance. Now, running the journal would not be possible without the help of many, many people. And so I would like to thank very much first and foremost, my co-editors, Philip Bond, Amit Saru, and Wei Zhang. They are putting in an enormous effort every day to keep up with the flow of submissions. And I'm very grateful. It is really a privilege to work with such a great team of co-editors. I would also like to thank our hardworking associate editors. We depend on them very much for advice on which referees to select, and they also give us a lot of valuable advice on editorial decisions when the referee reports come back and it's time to make a decision. We also had about 900 referees that helped us in 2019, and we are also very grateful for their effort. Many of these referees have to do multiple 2, 3, 4, and sometimes 6 reports for the JF a year, and we are very much aware of the enormous effort that they are putting in for the journal, and we are very grateful for that support. And then finally, I would like to thank our assistant editor, Wendy Washburn. She's handling all of the operational side of the journal, and she's doing a really fantastic job, and we are very happy with her help and her service. Now, before we go to the prizes, I just want to give you one reminder about our Twitter account at the JF. So if you want to follow what's going on at the Journal of Finance, a great way of doing this is following our Twitter account. You will get notifications about forthcoming papers and any other noteworthy things that are happening at the JF. Yeah? And right now we have about 12,000 followers, which happens to be, I just learned about, exactly equal to the number of members that the AFA has, but this is probably just a coincidence. All right, so the next point on the agenda is to do our annual awards. And as every year, we're going to give 2 prizes, one prize for corporate finance papers, the other prize for broadly understood asset pricing papers. And as in previous years, the corporate finance prize is sponsored by the Brattle Group. And for the asset pricing prize, we have a new sponsor this year, Dimensional Fund Advisors. And for both of these prizes, the first prize is a $25,000 award, and a distinguished paper prize carries an award of $10,000. And we are very grateful for the support of these donors. And so let's give a round of applause to our donors for these prizes. So before we show you who won the awards this year, let me tell you just briefly about the selection procedure. There has been no change compared to previous years, so it's exactly the same procedure as in the past few years. The way we do this is that the associate editors can first choose which prize they want to vote for, depending on what they feel is their area of expertise. And then they can nominate 3 papers, and they rank these papers from the December 2018 to the October 2019 issue of the JF. And then, as editors, we then look at the final list of these rank papers, and we make a selection of the prize awards among a very small number of papers that are at the very top of this list based on the associate editor ranking. Okay, and so we're going to start with the Brattle prizes, and for that I would like to get Shasi Sandy and Torben Woodman from the Brattle group to come up and help us with handing out the prizes, and then also my co-editor colleague Amit Zeru, please. All right, so the first prize, this is a distinguished paper prize that we're going to start with, is for Political Connections and Allocative Distortions by David Schoenherr. The other distinguished paper prize for the Brattle Prize is Proxy Advisory Firms, The Economics of Selling Information to Voters by Andrei Malenko and Nadia Malenko. All right, and the first prize goes to Foreclosure Contagion and the Neighborhood Spillover Effects of Mortgage Defaults by Arpit Gupta. Okay. All right. So then we get to the Dimensional Fund Advisors prizes, and for that I would like to ask Jacobo Rodriguez from DFA to come up, and also my co-editor colleague Wei Jiong, if he's here. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this one distinguished paper prize goes to Real Anomalies, Jules van Binsbergen and Christian Opp. Okay, the next distinguished paper goes to What is the Expected Return on a Stock? Ian Merton and Christian Wagner. Don't forget the check. All right, and the first prize goes to The Dividend Disconnect, Sam Hartzmark and David Solomon. Okay, thanks. Okay, so, and this concludes my part.
The AFA Society of Fellows was formed in the year 2000 to recognize individuals who have made distinguished contributions to the field of finance. Each year, the outgoing AFA president joins the society, so at the end of this year's meeting, we'll welcome David Hirschleifer as a new fellow. In addition, each year, the society votes for a new fellow from a list of candidates proposed by the AFA's nominating committee. This year, the newly elected fellow, in recognition of his contributions to the field of dynamic asset pricing, is John Ingersoll. At this point, I would like to invite AFA Fellow Robert Merton to the stage to say a few words in honor of John.
Well, I'm delighted to introduce John Ingersoll as the 2020 AFA Fellow. We first met a half a century ago, and I was his thesis advisor. Now, modern finance as a science, became that science, I would say, in the 1950s and 60s, starting with Markowitz, Tobin, Arrow, Modigliani Miller, and so forth. In the 60s, Fama, Samuelson, of course, Bill Sharp, and most importantly, CRISP, because you can't have a science if you don't have data. And since you chose to have 3/4 of this events be all empirical, that's for sure. And so by the end of the 60s, we were a bona fide science. The 1970s into the 80s marked another important period with big events. I would call that the introduction of really quantitative finance in the form of sophisticated mathematical models for intertemporal portfolio choice, asset pricing, option pricing, et cetera. And serendipitously, at the beginning of the 70s or into the 70s, there were an enormous set of shocks that hit the US financial system. I won't elaborate them for you, but they were really quite dramatic. And unlike the 2008-2009 crisis, the response was a wave of financial innovations, new institutions, and the creations of risk markets and options, futures, financial futures, swaps, et cetera. National mortgage market came. Those markets, those innovations could not have been implemented without the quantitative, sophisticated mathematical models developed in our science. And the serendipity is, because they happened at the same time, finance science and mainstream finance practice got married, and they still are. I would say the closeness of the most advanced, both theoretical and empirical work in finance and mainstream finance practice is not equaled anywhere in any other branch of economics. Now, earning a BS degree in physics at MIT in 1971, Jonathan Ingersoll found his way to the Sloan School Finance Group to get a master's degree and a PhD in 1976. He was an early pioneer in developing sophisticated financial models or mathematical models of finance, but ones that were practical and could be implemented virtually off the shelf. He was not a was not a mathematician working on a finance problem. He was a finance researcher with a comparative advantage in mathematics. The impact of his models on practice was recognized officially in 2002 when he was named Financial Engineer of the Year by the International Association of Financial Engineers. Now, over the 45 years of his research, pricing of derivatives and asset pricing has been his forte in a wide variety of areas: convertibles, digital options, high watermarks, valuation for hedge funds, and he even did some work on portfolio index manipulation and how to design an index that was manipulative proof. His best-known work, I would believe, was in the area of term structure of interest rates, which was done jointly with John Cox and Steve Ross. That team of three did 5 papers together, and I can say that the CIR model today, over 3 decades later, is still used in practice. Good record and good spirit. Okay. Now, he also found time to write a textbook, Financial Decision Making. I want to close my remarks by saying that Jonathan was identified very early as a star. The evidence for that, I give you two. One, his thesis, when she used dual funds as a strategic research site to create a structural model for valuing the components, or if you like, the capital structure of the dual funds, and also performed serious empirical work to test his structural model. Very classic thesis. That was published in the JFE before he even got his degree. The second one, and that's relevant to those, I saw some of you in the audience, who are here this year on the job market. When Jonathan was prepared to go to the job market, the University of Chicago jumped the gun. The meetings, as they are now, 4 months before those meetings of the job market, they got a hold of Jonathan and offered him a professorship, took him out of the market. Well, of course, that's extraordinary recognition to do that. But like all good things, there is a downside. I want to remind all of you, some of who I've met these last couple of days, who are on the job market, who are feeling the tensions and the scramble of all of this, that this is your coming out party, your debutantes. This is your official introduction to the profession. Your advisors have written letters and called people all over the country to talk about you and what you've done. You've gone to I don't know how many sessions and interviews where you've got a chance to tell a large number of people, from beginners to old-timers, about your work and who you are. And that's a very important and exciting part of the socialization of your entry officially into the profession. Jonathan missed out on that because he already had a job, didn't get to the meetings. I missed out on it as his advisor because I couldn't call up everybody and say, look, I got this great guy, let me tell you about his work. So I thought in closing, maybe as a second best solution, 44 years later, that we could treat this session as making up for Jonathan's missing out on his debutante party. Join me in applauding Jonathan Ingersoll.
Thanks, Bob. Unfortunately, John couldn't join us directly, but we do have a video of to roll. Thanks.
First of all, I want to thank everyone involved in giving me this honor. The American Finance Association has been part of my life for, around 50 years now, I would guess, not quite that. And I know I wouldn't be in this position apart from many people who have helped me over my career, starting with my thesis advisor, Bob Merton, and many other people like Franco Indigliani and Paul Samuelson at MIT, Myron Scholes, Gene Fama, Merton Miller, Doug Diamond, people like that at Chicago, and of course Steve Ross at Yale and my other current Yale colleagues, and I appreciate the help that all of them have given me. I read not too long ago on Amazon in a review of my textbook that my book was out of date, and I thought, well, gee, of course it is. It's more than 30 years old, and so in my retirement, I've decided that I'm going to, I wouldn't say rewrite that book, but I'm writing what I hope will be a PhD textbook, and so I will just put this available on the web. I would like anybody to use it who would like to use it. If there's any errors in it, obviously contact me. If there's anything you think I can say better, do that as well. I really hope to continue my career in finance much beyond what I've done so far. And I will keep doing so as I can. I don't really have much more to say, except to thank you again for what you've done for me all these years. Thank you. Goodbye.